Welcome back. I'm Budhar Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus this hour, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has told the Congress that the Indian proposal is the best we've received as a country in ongoing trade talks. Greer said they've been quite forward-leaning and added that India could become a viable alternative market for U.S. commodities at a time when America's farmers are facing inventories and fluctuating demand from China. Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, meanwhile, has expressed optimism as well regarding the ongoing trade talks, terming them progressive by nature. The remarks come at a time when a high-level U.S. delegation led by Deputy Trade Representative Rick Switzer is in India to hold talks with an Indian delegation led by Union Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal. Now, as per reports, these talks are aimed at ironing out differences to sign a bilateral trade agreement by the end of the month. The question that arises is, could this best offer ever be a fair deal for both countries? Also, how will this impact India-U.S. ties going ahead? Joining us live is Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat. Sumit Peer, political commentator, joins us live. Dr. Shat Kohli, senior economist, is also live with us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joins us live. Professor Nalapat, there is an optimism in both the U.S. and India sides on the progress in talks. What do you make of these latest statements coming in from both countries, and how do you interpret them on the state of affairs as far as our trade talks are concerned?
Look, there's one complete variable in this entire equation, and that is President Trump himself. He is now claiming that US inflation is brought down when it is going up. He has claimed that jobs are now increasing when jobs are decreasing. He's living in a world of his own. So that being the case, in my personal view, I think there are concessions beyond which India cannot offer, and except at the cost of the grievous cost of our national interest. So far as for farming community is concerned, many of them are at the margin of subsistence, and if they are, if the markets are dumped with U.S. rice and whatever and U.S. farm products, then the Indian farmer is going to be severely affected. And in my view, frankly, it's now high time that we tell Donald Trump to basically, either be reasonable or let's forget about that kind of a deal and let's look for external markets. Let's look for other sources for some time until President Trump comes back to normal. But frankly, Uday, he is expecting India to basically sacrifice his own interests for sake of what he thinks is his own political interest. I think this is one of the, most obvious examples of that. A country being forced to accept to dump, in which one can dump, American grain that now is under, as you said, fluctuating demand from China, because the Chinese know how to pressure Trump, and they have contacts with almost all the 100 US senators. So they know which issue pinches them, and they pinch those areas where senators get upset. Now these senators should basically ask, why is China fluctuating? China should behave. China claims to be a friend of America. That's what it claims anyway. Then why isn't it behaving as a friend rather than trying to put pressure on India? I saw the IANS report about Kansas farmers making this kind of talking about Indian markets and access. Let me say very honestly that agriculture is a subject which is very, very precious. There are limits beyond which no government can go, and certainly not this government. I don't think Narendra Modi is a kind of individual to succumb to bullying and blackmail. And what we are seeing from Donald Trump is classic bullying and blackmail by President Trump. I frankly believe he's trying to bully and blackmail Japan. That's astonishing. Japan has been a steadfast ally. He's forgotten the history of the entire post-war years, and he's forgotten the history of the post-Soviet years when India and the US were fast friends. He's forgotten everything. All he cares for is his own political interest, and he's now terrified that his party may lose the midterms and then leave him a lame duck president 2 years into his second term. So he's desperate, but he's looking the wrong way. He's trying to look for the wrong medicine. To try and destroy Indian agriculture will not help President Trump, but it will definitely be a very grievous wound on the economy of India. I think there are certain issues that we cannot make sacrifices, and if he's insisting on those issues, we should tell him, all right, you do your worst. He's already doing his worst, and I mean we are seeing that. And raising tariffs, for example, on basmati rice, that's a quality rice. It's a luxury rice.
Yes.
Consumers in America will have to pay a higher price because they'll want that kind of quality rice. They can't get it anywhere else in the market. So from that point of view, he's harming American consumers left, right, and center, becoming more and more unpopular left, right, and center. So I frankly believe there are limits to which our government can go, and I think those limits have been reached, and nothing more can be added to what has already been agreed to. And if he's not satisfied with that, well, then too bad. But we are not going to sacrifice our basic national interest
Okay.
to feed vanity and to feed his, I mean, according to him,
Yes.
I don't.
Yes. Professor Nalapat, please stay with us. I'll come back to you. Let me get in Ambassador Prabhu Dayal as well on these negotiations. Ambassador Dayal, how close or how far are we to reaching a deal? Now, reportedly, the goal, the ambition of the delegation is to get it done by the end of this month. Is that looking practically achievable according to you?
Both sides have expressed optimism, but Dr. Nalapat has hit the nail on the head by pointing out that because of the fact there is this factor called Donald Trump, the entire picture remains uncertain. And as Dr. Nalapat pointed out, Trump is trying to browbeat us, blackmail us, bully us. But there is a limit to which India can be accommodative. India has indicated a fairly high degree of accommodation, but we cannot go beyond a certain point. We have our own national interest to protect. Now, Mr. Nalapat also referred to this meeting with the Kansas farmers that was just yesterday. And these farmers complained of the Indian rice being dumped into the American markets, which was hurting the domestic farmers. And Trump reacted by saying that he would put new tariffs on Indian rice exports. And he soured the pitch, because he said all this just a day before the U.S. delegation was to start talks here in New Delhi with the Indian delegation. So as long as Trump is around on the scene, he can always sabotage by his words and his deeds any significant progress that might be, appearing to take place. Now, there are significant hurdles. Firstly, America wants access to the Indian market for its agricultural and dairy products. There are problems in that regard. Firstly, American agricultural products, which he especially wants to market, are soybean and corn. And these are genetically modified. India has a policy of not importing genetically modified crops. Secondly, he wants India to import dairy products. But it is well known that cattle in America are fed to a great extent on animal-based feed. That is to say, animal parts, such as parts of crushed bones, etc., are mixed in their animal feed. Now, that creates a lot of problems for us because there is a section of Indian society which has cultural and religious problems in regard to consuming such dairy products which are from cattle which are fed on animal feed. There are some other problems also. Like, for instance, India has to protect the interests of its farmers. And if cheaper American goods are dumped in the Indian market, then naturally their interests would be hurt. And let us not forget that in America, the agricultural sector is subsidized. So, therefore, it is possible for the farmers to export goods cheaper than what their actual cost is, because part of the cost is being met by the government subsidies. So, this is one
Right.
major obstacle,
Okay.
the agricultural and dairy sector.
Yes.
Then, of course, India has geopolitical independence. We do not want to play second fiddle to any country, and that is what the United States wants. The United States wants that we should.
Well, interestingly, now the US, though, saying that they are wanting India to, of course, get the bulk of their exports and not China, and they also want to shift that to India and the Southeast Asia. That's at least what this fresh statement is coming in from the Trade Secretary there. But Sumit Peer, come in here on what you believe is the current stumbling block. Sumit, what is the biggest stumbling blocks at play here? And how do you react to the negotiations progress? What do you believe the goal of this US delegation will be in India as they hold these talks, of course, with the Commerce Secretary? We're also learning that possibly the Commerce Minister could intervene as well at a particular juncture during the time period that they are here in India.
Uday, thank you for having me on your show. Well, to begin with, let's make our position clear. I will quote Mr. Piyush Goyal, who said a couple of days back, deal can happen tomorrow, after 1 week, after 1 month, after 1 year, or it can never happen. That is the position of India. There are some fundamentals which cannot be compromised. Look, the things changed when there was a new national security document which was released by Donald Trump administration, signed by Donald Trump exactly the day when Mr. Putin was here. That straightly talks to him that you have to increase trade and commerce and you have to increase business with India. It's not an option. It is not what you like. You may not like Modi. You may not like India, but you don't have option. You don't own the country. That is what your job as a president is to do. After that, they have started changing their tunes. Look, it's a paradigm where they know what they want. They can get what they want. But the problem is, look at the bigger picture. It is not about $1 billion in agriculture. It is not about Indian agriculture only. Basically, the design is much bigger. I'll tell you what. What happened yesterday? It's a question between personal liking and what my country needs. Trump is preferring his personal likings vis-a-vis what country needs. For example, look at the yesterday's fiasco. Somebody mentioned India and he was crazy. He was bombastic. Oh, India, are they dumping rice? Look, there were farmers from Louisiana which were there. He gave them a $12 billion package. That's okay. And somebody mentioned India. Oh, I can fix it. Let me put the tariffs. Let me put the tariffs. When he called Scott Bessent told him there's already 53% tariff on the Indian rice. What is your problem? The problem is not Indian rice. The problem is our rice brands are 70% cheaper than their prices because our cost of production is pretty low. And when we talk of our rice exports to America, it's 2.34 lakh tons. That is 5% of our total exports to the anywhere in the world. How much is it of American consumption? It's 5% of American consumption. So how 5% of my export and 5% of your total consumption makes America go crazy, and it becomes a problem for the president to handle. It was never about the rice. It is basically now the American farmers are not able to compete with a lot of places with our farmers. Today, if you look at foods, if you look at vegetables, if you look at milk, if you look at wheat, if you look at raw rice, and if you look at some of the things which are commonly used in the world, we are either number one and number two. We're a number one producer in the rice. We're a number one exporter of rice in the world. We kind of export 53 lakh tons of rice. Now, when you have controlling approximately 40% of the commonly eaten food basket of the world, where your farmers are growing food for 3 to 4 billion people of the world, where you are one of the biggest food exporters in the world, and American farmers, the MAGA voter base is not able to compete with you. So the name of India is getting you crazy. Why did we have a farmer protest long back? That was to basically create a wedge between the government and the farmers. Why is he adamant on a $1 billion selling to Indian, in Indian, selling his agriculture products to India. It's a 1 billion market for him. Why is he hell-bent on milk when we're the number one milk producer in the world? Basically, he wants to create a wedge between the Indian government and the Indian farmers, where it is given, or some people will amplify it, that Modi ne desh ko bech diya. They have sold the interest of the farmer. He has sold the interest of the milk producer. That is the logic. Why would he got crazy when we are just 5% of your total imports and consumptions? Because the name India and the Modi is irking him. Other countries don't stand up to him. Don't tell him if deal happens, theek hai, nahi hota, we don't care. When this kind of posturing happens, China has not done it. Any other country has not done it. It impacts the ego of the man. He's not going what is right for America, what is the logic. Even his people today say this is the best deal Bharat could have offered. Yes, we can import your corn, but we'll use it for ethanol making. We're not going to give it to our cows even.
Yes.
We'll the corn and use it for ethanol making. We can use it for that.
Absolutely.
But if you can, trample on our farmers, on our chota vyapari,
Yes.
on our sector,
Yes,
well, that's not
of course, it's
happen.
important. No, it's important to have a fair deal. It's important to have a very fair deal, and that's what's obviously taken the kind of time that it has to get this to its, the stage that the two countries sign it into finality, Dr. Kohli. But is the priority right now also on how to ensure that those secondary sanctions, those additional tariffs of 25% are dropped as soon as possible? Is that something that we're going to also be striving towards on a diplomatic level? Do you believe that could happen by the end of this month, whether or not a ceasefire happens between Russia and Ukraine? Dr. Kohli, also, as far as economically for India as well, how crucial is it to get this deal done as soon as possible?
Good evening, Uday, to you, my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers. Well, I'll pick up the last part of your question first. It is important for India, $40–50 billion of exports. I did meet some of the exporters after this 50% tariffs across the country. I had a chance, due to one of my engagements, to meet some of them. And there was a bit of pain, there's no doubt about that. They're struggling to find alternate markets. And they haven't been able to. So there's no magic stick, where you just go and sell your product in Europe or in Australia or in Southeast Asia and Latin America. It's not easy because your machines, your raw material, your manpower has been for years and years, they've been trained for a particular market. They're used to doing that. Especially I went to South India and I found that over there. Well, it is important. But then any trade deal, Uday, can happen when the atmosphere is congenial. When two of your important trade department representatives fly down to India, a night before that, if you make an irresponsible statement about rice, and I've eaten American rice, it is tasteless. I'm sorry to say that. I don't mean to demean food, anybody's food. It's tasteless. It is nowhere in comparison to our basmati GI tagged rice. Nowhere. Our rice has got a very beautiful smell. It tastes fantastically better than the American, rice, which is tasteless. So obviously, and of course, as Sumit said, it's much cheaper. It's much cost effective. So why would somebody buy American rice? So he had a delegation of farmers, and they said, "Oh, this is India, India." There was a joke going on social media. One of his Trump chef, he probably forgot to put salt in one of his dishes, and he said, "Listen, man, I'm going to impose tariffs on you now. You better be careful next time." You can't use the word tariff more often than not. You can't use tariff for it. Is tariff a solution to all the world's problems? So that he feels that every single problem in the world can be solved by tariff. I am not sure where did that doctrine come from. Where did that theory come from? How did that theory get into him? He may be a businessman, but a businessman doesn't simply survive on tariffs. I deal with businessmen all day. I mean, you don't survive on tariffs at all times. So I think that congeniality in the discussion was made a bit sour when you make a statement a night before. Now, whether something happens by the end of this month, I feel that something may be worked out which may look like a quick fix solution, the way they did with China. When China stopped the rare earth mineral exports and he imposed those tariffs, I think then 10% tariffs were rolled back. China said, okay, for 1 year, we're going to keep supplying. So something of that sort may happen because there is a lot of pressure on both the sides, both internally as well as at a diplomatic level, that some kind of deal should, too many discussions, too many meetings, flying down, Indians flying down there, they flying down here. This is, I think, I've even forgotten the count now. How many times has Indian and the US delegation met? I think it was 6, 7, 8. We've forgotten now. I used to note down and keep track. This is trip number 7, discussion number 7, discussion number 6, 5. I've stopped keeping that track because things don't materialize. You always give a statement, oh, we are very optimistic. And as far as President Trump's mood is, I have discovered a new index which I use so many times in stock markets and gold and silver in the world economy. I call it as a TMI, the Trump Mood Index. This index is not traded anywhere on any stock exchange, but I monitor this index very closely because it does govern the global business scenario, where you like it or you hate it. Well, that's the way it is. So I think, as my fellow panelists said, I completely agree. It all depends on that one man. These two poor people, they are here. They are here to do their job. It's their job to fly down and have a word with the Indian Commerce Ministry. They'll be sitting down together, staying in a hotel. Oh, we've thrashed over. At the end of the day, one fine statement, one fine feeling, shall I say, one fine emotion, shall I say, is probably going to overrule everything. So the taste of the pudding, Uday, isn't eating it. Unless it happens, I have stopped believing any optimism in this regard. I mean, my optimism went out of the window on many occasions. So I have stopped being optimistic. I would like to let that pudding go to my tongue to be able to tell you how does it taste.
Okay.
Simply by looking at and being served on the table, I have stopped believing that pudding looks good, Uday.
All right. Well, we've run totally out of time. So I'm going to thank you all for joining us. We'll, of course, be watching this space for further updates as these negotiations and dialogues continue. Let's slip into a short break on that note. Thanks to our viewers for joining us. Stay tuned to NewsX.